Kia ora, talofa namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the HBJ Shield. We are here to discuss some Aotearoa sporting matters, and that means we had a bit of mayhem for the Wellington Phoenix. My first takeaway, because this is there's many takeaways, many ideas I can throw up about the Chiefy situation, but more importantly the Wellington Phoenix situation, because they move forward without Chiefy, and I am starting to think that maybe Giancarlo Italiano gave himself the nickname Chiefy.
I have read where it came from, and I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure in an interesting little crossover between the sports that were covered, I'm pretty sure it has something to do with, like, they took the nickname from what was his name, Paul Harrigan, or the footy show back in the day, right? The Chief. Pretty sure it's like because he was the Chief, someone decided to call this guy the Chief, and then that's how it came. It was like a translated nickname. I don't know if he gave it to himself, but I do think that maybe if you had this nickname while you're coaching State League in Australia and you also have it while you're coaching in the A-League in Wellington, you might have brought it with you. You know, I don't know if he originated it, but I don't know if there were anyone who called him Chief back there who were also calling him Chief back there. So maybe, it might have been an imported situation.
That's right. Like, that happens. They say, "What's your nickname?" You say, "Mom, my nickname is blah blah," and then everyone starts calling you blah blah. Like, that happens. But my point here is that Chiefy can talk, and we've had now 3 seasons of, "Oh, he's such a good bloke. I like Chiefy, but he's a good bloke, but," like, we've literally done that nearly every week on the podcast, talking about A-League football, as we tend to do. And I don't really think you're seeing this type of A-League coverage around Aotearoa. So this is what we do. We're here every week talking through Kiwi football, and now that it's all over, now that shit has hit the fan, now that we have officially realized that, well, not realized, but I think just shout out to all the fans who hated Chiefy and thought he sucked and all this stuff. You're ahead of your time. But I seem to think that he's the type of coach who just is good with words. He can spin a yarn, and there's the type of coaches who can spin a yarn to get into jobs. They'll lose their jobs. They'll spin a yarn. They'll get another job. These type of coaches, they don't do a lot of winning, but they can spin yarns. They can use buzzwords. They can make their ideas and plots and schemes, ways and means sound alluring. As I said, I'm throwing up these ideas, so just bear with me because I'm going all over the show. There's a lot of accountability chat in the wake of Chiefy stepping down, and I think in this situation, like, how much accountability can you have? Because, yeah, sure, the players all feel shit because they suck at football compared to Auckland FC. They lost, their coach got sacked, fired, resigned, whatever you want to say, so they're taking accountability for sure. But as fans and media, who cares if the players took accountability? Who cares if, what's his face? Sean Gill, who I like, he seems like a good person in charge of the Phoenix, so good stuff there. Who cares if he took accountability? You can only, there's only one person where the accountability matters, and that's the bloke who resigned because his team was going backwards and he led his team to comprehensive losses against their arch rival. So in these sporting scenarios, sure, if you're doing yourself, you make a mistake, take accountability. This is a good way of framing it, maybe. You make a mistake, You take accountability. That's my fault. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Problem solved. It's all good. We all move forward. But then you might have a situation where some big Donny wants to look like they're taking accountability. So they'll take accountability for something that they didn't even do. And you're like, okay, no, what's going on here? And I just think in sporting situations, you can only have so much accountability. Because I really don't care if the players took accountability. I don't care if Sean Gill took accountability. That's not relevant here. The Phoenix sucked, and the point about taking accountability is that it's usually down to one person in a leadership role, and that's all that matters. And so shout out to Chiefy. Big man took accountability, whipped his shit. Your football team clearly sucked. The Phoenix were clearly going backwards under Mr. Italiano. And Mr. Italiano, in his press conference, was talking about, oh, the players, they're low in confidence. I've been trying to build up the confidence. You're the coach, bro. You've been coaching these players for 3 years, and now they're low in confidence? What are we doing?
I think they've been low in confidence for a little while.
But that's under him.
I know, exactly.
He specifically,
that is part of his coaching job. To
exactly.
Give them confidence.
He kind of made it seem like there was a lot of like, oh, it's been such a difficult period for the club with a restructuring and all this stuff. And it's like, I just don't think your team's that good under your coaching. Because Chiefy was making it seem like there's all these other things happening. And there may be. I did find it interesting that the main bloke taking accountability was also suggesting things were happening behind the scenes, the restructuring and all this stuff, the focus, the designs of the Phoenix. It's like, well, you took accountability, and you may be shuffling accountability on because
right.
The thing about accountability,
yes, but answer.
The thing about accountability is you can pass the accountability on. And someone else can take accountability. Will the players take accountability? I don't know.
Well, to your point on that with Sean Gill, I heard him in his press conference and then also on RNZ this morning, both times it was asked, like, if Chiefy hadn't resigned, were you going to sack him? And it was a very emphatic non-answer, but as like, not that yes. The non-answer was emphatic. He didn't say yes. He said like the position had become untenable. Yeah, he said like yes. As far as you can go without saying yes.
Yeah.
Which makes it sound like a yes. But it's also like, well, that's hypothetical, right? Like he did resign, so you didn't have to sack him. Which is like taking accountability for more than there is possible to take accountability for again. Because it's like, but what you actually have, we don't know because you didn't. That didn't happen, right?
But that's not him. This is the thing about these press conferences and talking to the media. They ask specific questions, and then it's presented as if the coach, the player, just said that on their own.
Yeah, right. So in answer to a leading question, yeah.
In the press conference for Sean Gill, some ridiculous person asked him, in hindsight, do you think it was a good idea to stick with Chiefy and give him a contract extension? It's like, that was a year or whatever ago.
Yeah.
And then they asked him about accountability for that. It's like, yes, I made the decision. The team kept sucking. Now his position's untenable. Like, we can't just go back and change things in time. Hindsight's a glorious thing, all that stuff. But this is the thing, like, questions about accountability from the media. How many people for accountability are we looking at here? Okay, so every person at the Phoenix takes accountability. What the shit? What does that mean to us? Nothing. So I find the questions are the issue, and when you see a lot of these press conferences and media snippets, it's like Andrew Webster talking about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck playing fullback. Andrew Webster's not saying that willy-nilly, just fresh off the top of his dome. Someone is asking him about the chances of something that hasn't really happening, and it's a possibility. Like, it's that type of thing. But
the only person whose accountability in this situation has a tangible outcome that actually affects us as, as fans and followers and stuff is Italiano, because he stepped aside as coach. Someone else comes in, Chris Greenick, up for the rest of the season, probably.
Yeah.
That's a tangible change. Players taking accountability for a bad performance doesn't change the bad performance. The management taking accountability for the hire doesn't change anything. Only Chiefy's accountability actually means something. Everything else is like, word jumble.
Man, Chiefy did a lot of word jumbling. I've kind of come to this position where, because I like Chiefy. Chiefy was a good bloke, all that stuff. But his team didn't get better at football. And I just keep thinking maybe he's the type of bloke who calls himself Chiefy. Like that's an insult. And I'm not going that strong just yet. But given the difference between his word jumble and performances, I am open to the idea that Mr. Italiano is the type of person to give himself a big dog nickname. Like maybe you're just going around calling yourself Big Donny. No one else called you Big Donny. You're calling yourself Big Donny. Seems like that might be something that Chiefy does, because I never really saw much correlation between what he was saying and what was happening on the football field. And there's a lot of other weird shit going on, because you'd know this better than me. Like, some of the young players have been kicked out of the team pretty much for minor errors. We've had the goalkeeper.
Sort of, yeah.
Well, like where's Luke Brooksmith?
Dropped over a minor error.
Like, he is literally one of your best. Like, you've talked about the importance of Brooksmith as an attacking player, and you don't need him because you're so determined to set standards that I don't even know exist. So he's not going to be playing football for your team. That seems ridiculous. To be honest, I feel vindicated about all goalkeeping antics here. Like, Michael Vowd's a good goalkeeper. Funny that everyone just had a little moment of hating on Michael Vowd. Yeah, sure. Guess what? He took accountability for his performances, and he came back and he got the job done. And what's Chiefy done? He's rotated through 3 different goalkeepers. One who has a history of making really bad errors, then made another really bad error. It's just so weird. And with we literally settled on Chiefy overcomplicating his football team. That goes into the word jumbo, the mumbo jumbo. It's all there. And I knew something was a bit weird when he was drinking his V on the sideline, because I haven't seen him drink V on the sideline before. I've seen him have the water bottle, but I haven't seen him with a V. And like Chiefy in the press conference, so many sleepless nights. Like, bruh, the best thing you can do as a person, as a football coach who needs to stay sharp for coaching footy, is have a sleep.
Stop drinking the V. Keeping you up at night.
Well, he's got a job to do. He's coaching a football game, I'm sure he's not having a V at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night. But I don't know if the Wellington Phoenix situation is so shambolic, so crazy, that he can't sleep. Like, the best thing you can do to get your team better, to be a better coach, is have a sleep. And then the press conference, he's like, just so many sleepless nights, and now I can have a proper sleep. Shit, like, I don't know. It's just a whole lot of weird stuff going on. And of course, they got smoked by Auckland FC. It was embarrassing. Before this game, we're talking like maybe this is a good opportunity for the Phoenix to win, because like Auckland FC, they weren't that great. Like, you think about how this derby is played out, and you'd think Auckland FC, the Super Saiyans of A-League football. I don't know what the goal difference is, but I'd say the majority of Auckland FC's goals have come from shit Wellington Phoenix football. Either bad goalkeeping errors or defensive errors or whatever. And then you come into this game and the Phoenix are competitive. Let's be honest, they pooed their pants. In the middle of a stadium that continues to look terrible because it's never full and it's just yellow seats, empty yellow seats. And I don't really look at social media too much, so I'm not checking social media, but they kept saying Michael Vowd was some comments from Michael Vowd during the game. So I did have to go look at that video from Michael Vowd. And him and Lachlan Brook, like Lachlan Brook's talking shit. It's like, bro, you've been here one season. I don't know. But fair play to him. He's probably the best player across both teams. Good A-League player. And he's an Aussie, so he's, a cocky little bugger.
I bet he's given himself a nickname, so.
As he should, to be honest. But he's the type of player where someone else is going to give him a nickname and it might be Pele. Michael Vowd and Auckland FC do a great job of trolling Wellington Phoenix. It's borderline bullying, to be honest, if we're where we're at.
It's not as much bullying as what they do on the field, so.
Well, the whole thing is bullying right now.
The entire package, yeah. It is.
Nothing Michael Vowd said in his trolling video was false. Everything was correct. And that's the funny thing. Michael Vowd's a funny bugger. He's a funny C-U-N-T. He's a funny bugger. He's always having a laugh. Well, no, I'm always having a laugh at what he says because he's got a different style of humor. Nothing he said in that video was wrong. Everything he said was correct. So it seems like, whoa, this dude's talking a whole bunch of shit, and it's like, well, he's just telling it how it is. And some people don't want to hear how it is. But that's where we're at right now. And ultimately, this is just normal football. It's very different for New Zealand sports to have this type of situation. But it's good to see that this derby encapsulates football, soccer football. Because Chiefy resigning and the perspective of Wellington Phoenix comes from the derby. No one mentions the Phoenix season. No one mentions where the Phoenix are at in the A-League around Chiefy resigning. Everything about the story is being delivered and packaged as part of the derby. That's football. You go around the world and there are football teams and they don't care about anything else that happens as long as they beat their rival. You got to be wary of relegation, but we can finish down the ladder and beat our rival and it's acceptable.
Well, Tyler Bindon played in a derby game for Sheffield United on the weekend against Sheffield Wednesday, and by beating Sheffield Wednesday, they relegated Sheffield Wednesday. So,
that's glorious.
Imagine that. Imagine if the Phoenix had been relegated off the back of that result. That's the capacities.
I wonder if
that was only a 2-1 win.
I wonder if the kit man would take accountability for that one.
Oh, you'd hope so.
But the derby and the mayhem of the coach resigning straight after the game, you don't see that in Super Rugby. There's none of that exists in any level of cricket. I mean, what's happened if Mr. Koppinen took some accountability for the Breakers? Finishing lower in the ladder but shut out because they won the Ignite Cup. But you don't necessarily see that type of thing happening there either. This is football. And it's great because New Zealand now has this pure football element. We got a hostile derby. Like Chiefy was saying, he hates everything about Auckland FC. I don't like how they've conducted themselves. I don't like what they're doing. I don't like anything about them. You don't like winning? That's what you don't like? Because Auckland FC wins. Wellington Phoenix hasn't been winning. So Chiefy doesn't like Auckland FC because they win, and Aotearoa wins because we have, like, the football has escalated to this point. We don't just have like a football team that's just like goes about their business in the Kiwi fashion and everything's a bit hum-ho, bit mundane. No, football has escalated to the point now where in New Zealand, crazy shit's happening for football. And by that, I don't mean like these youngsters are doing crazy shit. I mean, this is crazy football shit. And that is different to all other sports. So shout out to Chiefy. See you later. Now the Phoenix have brought in Chris Greenacre. Another stint for him as interim coach.
Fourth time lucky.
And based on what Mr. Gill was saying, Greenacre will be the next full-time coach. He basically said that. So, they asked about other coaches possibly, and it was kind of suggested that Chris Greenacre will be taken over as interim coach with an eye to get him as the full-time coach. And then, but there's another thing, because I was reading our newsletter yesterday, thenichecache.substack.com, and you outlined some quite major differences between how the Phoenix reserves operate under Chris Greenacre and how Italiano's teams operate. Like, do we have Greenacre he doesn't use the back three.
No, never used the high line. Always like to have a second striker, or at least an attacking midfielder who would play centrally off the striker, rather than, Italiano's teams have often had like the two attacking midfielders, but one on one side, one on the other, so they could sort of operate as half wingers. It's basically like, to be honest, the way the reserves play never really changed after Ufuk Talay left. So they still play the way Ufuk Talay played 3 years ago with the Phoenix first team. And Italiano came in and sort of played that way the first year. Lost some key players, changed it last year. Wasn't very good, changed it drastically again this year. So like 3 quite significant differences in how they've played. And the reserves just kind of never bothered with any of that. Whereas if you look at Auckland FC, their reserve team is an exact mimicry of their A-League team. To the point where, like, I think that's why you see, say, Matt de Hotman getting on the bench on the weekend and James Mitchell getting on there. It's like they miss a player in a certain position. They have a player in that exact role. Although I would have thought Finn McKinlay would be more the Verstrata swap, but maybe they didn't want a Verstrata swap. Maybe the idea was that Howison would do that role and they wanted a new Howison, in which case, yeah, James Mitchell is the guy. He comes in, he's played that role for the reserve team. He sits on the bench, gets a little debut. Bailey Ferguson didn't play for the reserves. He was signed from from an Australian team. He's sort of dual eligible for Australia and New Zealand through his parents. And he played for the Oceania Pro League team, but he effectively came in as, he's like the same player as Marley Francois in terms of the like framework of this team. He comes in because Francois is injured. Who's the closest to this? We have a guy exactly ready to go. We don't even need to think about it. There's no way you could do that with the Phoenix, because what happens if Tim Payne gets injured? Well, Tim Payne's playing right wing back. You don't have wing backs in the way the reserve play. So do you pick one of your wingers to play that role, or do you pick Schwan Loke as a fullback or whatever? Like, you don't. That team is not built to complement the first team in the way that Auckland FC's very, very clearly is, and I think that is that might be a good thing, because it means Chris Greenacre has something to come in and be like, here's how we're going to do it, and it's going to be different to what was done before. Because clearly, whether what they were doing before had potential, which I've always kind of felt it did, the fact is it didn't work. And the fact is you need to draw a line in the sand between that and next. So you have to do something different. And he has the ability to come and do something different, which probably helps for this interim thing. Don't think it's helped throughout Chiefy's season this year, where it's like for a team that does give more opportunities to their reserve team players than Auckland FC do. That reserve team is not set up to complement the first team in anywhere near the same way.
What are the Warriors in the two Andes era? Everything is aligned.
Yeah, I thought about that. I think I mentioned in the thing about the Black Caps, right? It's like Michael Bracewell's out, Cole McConkie comes in. Sorted. The exact replacement. You've got that ready to go straight away. All their bowlers have that,
Black Caps, the thing a lot of people don't realize about New Zealand cricket, that like when they're talking up all like how shit New Zealand cricket is, everything is designed towards Black Caps success. Everything in the Black Caps pipeline is directed, funneled towards the Black Caps. Not just the player style, but coaching information, learning, education, sharing skills, development, everything is aligned with the Black Caps. The Warriors, you got the player styles, playing style, coaching, skill development, physical training, strength and conditioning, everything is aligned. Now, that hasn't always been the case for the Warriors, hence it's important that they are now doing it. I am stunned of the lack of alignment for the Wellington Phoenix. And
I have been too, and also because the women's reserve team is set up to complement a new system under a new coach. Chiefy's been there 3 years and they're not doing that. They sort of were, but they've moved away from it. The women's reserves play like Bev Priestman's first team does. They're like Auckland FC, not going to get a lot of opportunities in a strong competitive team, first team, but at least if they needed to in a case of emergency, it's there.
Which makes me think it was Chiefy's problem. Because the Phoenix aren't going to, like the evidence I have for the Phoenix, there are things there that tell me they're a good organization. They've got the alignment in the women's side. They've got a good men's development program. The whole for the Phoenix is the A-League team, the A-League men's team that is coached by Chiefy Italiano. That academy, that system has a proven record of developing good players. Got one thing more to say about that. But for whatever reason, I think you might go deeper into the nitty gritty. As I said, I'm stunned at the lack of alignment between the A-League team and the reserves. And I don't think that's Chris Greenacre's problem. I don't think that's the Phoenix problem. That seems like a dude who might have called himself the Chiefy, thinking that his way was the best way. And from what you've
Which way? Because in 3 different seasons, he played in 3 different styles. And I think that's why that got to that point, is because the reserve team can't keep up if the first team keeps changing.
This is a bloke who loves to overcomplicate things.
Exactly. That's the bit to underline.
Not one last, I don't know. We could go for 3 hours here. The Chiefy's reputation for developing young players, to me, this is where I get into like, maybe this dude called himself Chiefy because Steve Corica's done a good job developing young players at Auckland FC. I don't think there's anything unique. Might be wrong. I don't think there's anything unique about what the Phoenix are doing with the young players compared to other A-League teams. Newcastle Jets are the hot A-League team with young players, right? Like every team has young players playing. Every team has young players starting. Every team has young players coming off the bench. And I don't think the Phoenix have more young players than other teams. Starting,
the Phoenix
coming off
reference Central Coast Mariners when they sort of put more of a shift, more of a focus on their reserve thing and being a development club around the time they started getting transfer fees for selling players, which is, a legitimate business model at that point. Around the time they put a focus on that, I'm sure, like Sean Gill did a video talking about this is the direction we want, like we are emphasizing this at the club. And they referenced Central Coast Mariners the whole time having just won a championship with a bunch of like locally developed players. It wasn't even unique when they started doing it. They were not copying someone else's homework, but they were certainly taking an influence from a rival club.
Yeah, but that's normal. Like everyone's got like,
yeah, of course,
yeah. But again, that's the Phoenix. The Phoenix has proven that they are a good academy setup. They are, as a club, they have a proven record of developing good young players to play in the A-League and or sell them. I've seen nothing from Chiefy to suggest that he's a wizard in developing youngsters. The youngsters we've seen play a lot, Isaac Hughes and Matt Sheridan, who, like, under another coach, they might have been playing the same amount. Like, then you look at some of the players who have not progressed. Well, where's Luke Brooks-Smith? His progression halted to the point where he was shuffled out of the matchday squads. Where's Sloan Rodriguez? Where's these other guys who have already played? Now, should they be playing? Should they not be playing? Who cares? But we are told, maybe by Chiefy himself, because he seems like a talker, that he's a guru with the youngsters. He's a wizard with the youngsters. Maybe I'll just chill a bit and say, and put it this way, there's nothing unique about what the Phoenix have done in the A-League. Because I look around the A-League and I see other teams who are doing the same thing, who are doing it better, who are doing it worse. Like every A-League team has youngsters, and maybe I should just have a little, I don't know, like who are the youngsters who started that game? Hughes, just Hughes.
Let me scroll through. We had, don't know if Finroy Conchi's gone. I don't know if he's injured or what.
Another young player who's just come through the system and really got better under Chiefy. That's the thing. Like, these players haven't got better. The team hasn't got better. Any other youngsters starting that game?
Yeah, Hughes, 90 minutes. No sign of Gabe Sloan Rodriguez. Lucas Kelly-Hill only got quarter of an hour off the bench. Luke Supix played 1 minute all season. Schwan Loke was back on the bench after 5 weeks, not even being seen, but he didn't get on. Matt Sheridan, 90 minutes. No sign of Luke Brooks-Smith. LB Kelly-Hill, 45 minutes off the bench as an emergency solution. Jaden Smith was on the bench but didn't play.
Yeah, it's right. It. So we got
that's it.
We got two youngsters starting. List. 2 youngsters started this game. There's other A-League teams who have 4 youngsters starting and guys coming off the bench to contribute. Like, Chiefy wasn't doing anything unique as far as developing young players goes. In fact, we saw more recently, maybe as he got, well, here you go, lack of sleep, because he's stressed about the results because he's starting to realize his team isn't playing for him and his team is losing games and he might not be a good coach. Then we start to see a bit more recruitment for the senior players. So maybe once he felt the pressure, because his, like, the youngsters he was meant to be developing didn't actually develop that much. So then he thinks, oh shit, we need to win some games. We need some senior players, which is something we talked about because their roster changed drastically by getting in solid A-League professionals, let alone a couple All Whites. Again, that goes back to the Phoenix versus Chiefy, because I think those All Whites came back to the Phoenix. Well, Sarpreet Singh came back, Bill Tuilama came back to Aotearoa to join the Phoenix. Maybe that was because they want to be at the Phoenix. They weren't there just to be coached by Chiefy. They respect the organization and how it's run. But those players aren't youngsters. Those are All Whites. Those are overseas professionals. So maybe the change in Phoenix, their team structure and their recruitment, came from anxiety. It came from stress about losing games. We need to start winning some games. So what are we going to do? Get some experienced players in. And as I'm talking through this, I'm just getting more and more baffled at how backwards the Phoenix went over these few years. Not just results, not just performances, but the reputation as the Phoenix, because a couple of years ago they were doing all right, and it was all about the youngsters. It was all about the young academy players. And yet the guru for the youngsters has limited their game time. He's taken them out of match day squads, and like they just keep losing. Like what? This is so messy, and I think we need to move on under Greenacre.
Yeah, it was definitely messy. It was that's the overcrowded thing, is the overcomplicated thing, is it's like and I think this is where it all went wrong, is that every time there was like a bit of a hurdle, Italiano would tend to either double down on what he was doing or like add to what he was doing, and just it got, rather than simplifying at those sort of like juncture moments, he would complicate further. And that eventually is going to lead you to fall out with your young players, because they're not experienced enough to take on that much information and be able to go out there and still play their best game. You're not putting them in a situation. So you're not putting Luke Brooks-Smith in a situation to be the best version of him in an A-League game if you're drilling onto him constantly how he needs to be running back, track your runners, all this stuff. Like, yeah, you got to do that stuff, but you can't be like putting a stigma in the guy's head. You know, you got to still let him play with some freedom. And you also got to understand that if you're going to play players like that, you need to give them a bit more wiggle room. And perhaps that means if Brooks Smith is playing on the right wing, your right fullback, wingback can't be as advanced, because he needs to know that Brooks Smith won't be able to track back all the time, and he is going to turn the ball over sometimes. So you have to be prepared for that. A lot of those little things, and I think there's
a high line stuff as well. Like, you're asking young players to play a very difficult defensive structure with the high line.
And Schwan Lope pretty much suffered for that, because he got torn to pieces in the first derby of the season. He hasn't really played much since then. And I don't think that's an overt, he's given up on this player, move him along sort of thing. It's like, he's not better than Tim Payne. He shouldn't be starting ahead of him. And they have other guys like Matt Sheridan, Corbin Piper who've played those positions too. So sure,
but that's not ideal young player development.
No, it's not. And especially when you've signed Mandrake James to be the key guy in your defense, and then you add Bill Tuiloma midway through the season, which helps. But Mandrake James turns like an ocean liner, you know. If you're going to be playing with your defensive line up on halfway and you don't have any pace in your back three, you can't be blaming the fullback wing backs for not being able to get back if your centre backs can't do it either, and they're the senior players. You know, there's a lot of that stuff where it's like, I see the ambition of what he's going for, and I like the style that he wanted to get, but he didn't have the team for it, and it took too long to realize that. And
this is reality versus perception. I think some of the perception, especially coming from Italiano, this is where you get the talk and stuff. I think that gave him a different perception for some people like myself, who I thought he might have been a good development coach, you know, but he wasn't. So the youngsters...
He was fine, but he relied too much on the young players to be able to get out of it, you know?
Yeah, but the older players didn't get better either.
No. Well, there you go.
That's a major issue.
Yeah.
And it was the older players.
The bigger issue.
The older players made major errors as well. That's how you poo your pants in the biggest game of the season.
I do think, with Italiano's youth record, I think that was more about like participation than it was about progress, in that he gave a lot of minutes to players. He did do that. That is undeniable. Your point about whether they actually got better, like, yes, they get better with some experience. Did they progress in the way that they would in an accelerated way, or did we see any breakthrough players? I mean, I hesitate to put like Jesse Randall as an example opposite in the breakout he's had this year with Auckland FC, because he is a fair bit older than that. You know, he's 23 or 24 or something like that. He's not really a young player, even if he's a young professional. but we didn't see any Finn Sermons, Alex Paulsons, or Ben Olds this year. Admittedly, that's hard to do in a losing team, I guess, but point stands. In fairness to Chiefy, that first season was awesome. Like they was their best ever season. It was built upon the strength of those guys like Sermon, Paulson, Old. People were panicking about the weakness in that squad going into that year, and it turns out that was not the case, because we had 3 guys who are now, a couple of years later, locked on members of what will be a All-Whites World Cup squad in a few months. And I do wonder if maybe the club bought a little too high on that strategy at a time where it's like, here is a very rare alignment of like 3 of the best players who have come through your academy, probably 3 of the 5 best players that have come through the academy to make the first team. So excluding like 3 of the best 6, definitely. Like that might have been maybe a little too fortuitous of a time to be leaning all in on that, without wondering if, like, is this sustainable in the years where you don't have guys of that ability, which I think is what we've seen in the last couple of years. Then the other thing there, it was like Chiefy being a nice bloke. And this is where I get into Chris Greenacre, because I think that is true. That, like, I really enjoyed listening to Italiano doing his press conference. I thought he was. I do actually think the last 2 years he could get a little bit prickly at times when he was having to defend a record that wasn't very easy to defend. But I always appreciated the way that he gave like actual information. Like he would give insights into what he was thinking and the tactics he was drawing. That stuff I found really good. I like the sort of the story of him not being a pedigreed player. And making it this far as a coach. I think that stuff is great. Like, it's fantastic that coaches like that can get that opportunity. And I don't agree with the like hindsighty, let's rewrite history of, well, he shouldn't have been given this season at all. The fact is, at the time, I thought he deserved a 3rd season. When you've had 1 good year, 1 bad year, let's have a 3rd year and see how it shakes out.
He had Andrew Webster.
It shook out badly. Like Andrew Webster. Yeah, Andrew Webster's 3rd year was good.
No, it's
Giancarlo Italiano's 3rd year was not.
No,
that's
but
why one's still there and one's not.
Andrew Webster's 1st year was good. 2nd year was bad. And like the different contracting situations, but the Warriors were never going to fire Webster or not continue with Webster after 1 bad season. So I think we're aligned there. At the time, we both said, just stick with Chiefy, give him another crack, and see how we go.
Yeah, and we've seen.
Yeah,
and it didn't get better, so now he's gone. Like that's how that's supposed to work. But I fear we're entering similar territory with Chris Greenacre. This is where I want to be a little bit more, maybe a little bit grumpier about this. Like because there seems to be an idea of like, this is the 4th time he's been interim. It must be his turn. Like here we go. It's his time now. And first of all, those are different jobs. The interim coach versus the full-time head coach. The interim coach's job is to come in and fix the problems from the previous coach. The full-time coach's job is to come in and build something. You're not just repairing, you're building. And those are different tasks. And I don't know what Chris Greenacre's actually done to warrant being a full-time head coach. He's a very good interim because he's done it before. He's the perfect interim to have in this situation. He knows what he's doing, and he has a relationship with these players and blah, blah, blah. He's been around the club. He can help boost that confidence that is clearly so much lacking. But 4 years as the reserve coach in the National League. In those 4 years, he's finished 6th out of 10th, 8th out of 10, 5th out of 10, and in 8th out of 11th. Most recently, that team has had a negative goal difference in 3 of those 4 years. Never had a winning record, although 2 of them did have as many wins as they did losses, but never had more wins than losses. And a year ago, I would have said that's pretty good for an under-20s team competing in the National League. Then Auckland FC came along. I think we can say very similar things about the trajectory of Giancarlo Italiano's tenure as well. Then Auckland FC came along and everything got messy. Auckland FC last year, in their first attempt at the National League, they finished 4th. They finished 4th with I think 5 wins, 3 draws, 2 losses. So not just a winning record, but like more than twice as many wins as they did defeats. They had the best defensive record in the competition. They conceded fewer goals in Auckland City. They conceded fewer goals in Wellington Olympic.
Which, hold on, that's aligned with their A-League team.
And like I said before, that is aligned with their A-League team. They have the same defensive steel. They play in the same way tactically. Everything like Luke Casserly as the coach. He's not going to be coaching them this year, but he was the coach of the reserve team last year. He's also an assistant with the first team, so there's a very direct link. They sort of have that with Luke Tung at the Phoenix, but it's not the same because the equivalent would be Chris Greenacre being the head coach of the reserves and then the assistant for the first team. And as we've just discussed, there's actually not that much tactical crossover between Greenacre and Italiano in those two teams. So Auckland, in their first ever attempt at the National League, had a better season than the Wellington Phoenix reserves in over a decade have ever had. And in that light, I don't know that Chris Greenacre's record there with that team is that good in comparison. He's also the under-20s World Cup, the under-20s New Zealand coach as well. Took them to the last World Cup, where they didn't make the knockout round after 4 consecutive instances of the New Zealand under-20s making the knockouts of the under-20 World Cup. I mean, they were close. They won one of their games. I think they beat I think it was Egypt in there, which is a good win, but they didn't make the knockouts as previous coaches have. I'm not seeing a whole lot there to warrant that Greenacre is like warranting where does the first team buzz come from there, other than the fact that he's a nice guy. He's been around the club for a while. He sort of, he has relationships with the players already. And I guess he's available and wants the job. Like, that's all. You say the same thing about Giancarlo when he got the job, right? There's nothing different there. And I don't think that doing the same thing is what they need to be doing right now. Perhaps actually not hiring a nice guy might be a little bit more, and someone who can shake things up a little bit more. Or, I mean, the way to stop on this is or the way to end this bit is to say, like, the blueprint is kind of already there, and you're not going to find someone with the equivalent pedigree in men's coaching to what Bev Priestman has, but you can probably find someone who can do the type of thing that Bev Priestman has done. Because when Giancarlo Italiano was talking about his players being short on confidence and short on self-belief, well, that's the number one thing that I think has changed between the Phoenix women last year to this year. And you saw that even just on the weekend, where they were able to salvage another away draw against, this was a Melbourne Victory they were playing. Didn't play that well in the game. Scored a late goal to avoid what would have been a 1-0 defeat, which is exactly the way they've been losing that game for 2 years. But repeatedly now this season under Priestman, you're seeing a team that can play until the final whistle, that still they can score those goals, that are going and scoring those goals, that know that they can compete with anyone else in the league. And it helps having the reputation that Priestman has, because I've thought about this from when I wrote about that team, I wrote about it from the perspective of she's coming in and whatever she asks tactically, the players are going to follow. And then I heard an interview with her and realized it's actually simpler than that. It's not just her saying, like, Grace Jolly, can you be a midfielder for me? Like, yes, coach, I can, and I'm gonna play very well there. It's not just that. It's like it's also that, but it's in a simpler context. It's Beth Priestman coming in and saying, Grace Jolly, you are one of the best players in the A-League. I believe it, therefore you should believe it. And that Phoenix women's team are brimming with confidence because they've got a coach who has managed to, as I'm sure Chiefy's has been telling those players those things, but they didn't play like they believed it. The Phoenix women play like they believe it.
That's the thing about Chiefy. He talks a lot, so he's telling people a lot. But
a lot of information. Definitely a lot of information going through.
Well, it's just actions over words, and the actions speak differently to the words. Funnily enough, the Wellington Phoenix women, they're fourth on the ladder, but they've only conceded 13 goals. The next best are the top 3 teams who have conceded 17 goals. So notably the best, the lowest goals against in the A-League, and they've scored 29 goals, which is tied with Melbourne City, who are first. And as you said, one team's full of confidence, the other's not full of confidence, and two different very doing my Chiefy mumbo jumbo here. Two different positions for the Wellington Phoenix teams. Here's like a good finishing point maybe before we just roll through some other topics. I'm not even going to ask. I think right now, the Auckland FC system, everything from the A-League performances, their team in the A-League, now we've seen another team added to that system, or kind of two teams, because you got two different reserve teams. One in the Auckland competition, one in the OFC league, with players who don't have much affiliation to Auckland FC. But we've seen that system get bigger. So the Auckland FC system has gone from one team with a few fringe players. Now it's basically three teams, or maybe 2.5 teams. Compared to the Wellington Phoenix men's system, which has been in place for much longer, probably a decade at least, with surely twice as many players in their system, going from down to their reserve team, then they must have junior teams as well. So
yeah, down to 13, so more than twice as many, probably 10 times as many players.
And yet, right now, late February, the Auckland FC system is better. I think that is obvious. I think that is not a hot take. I think that is just actual factual. How do you feel about that statement?
Well, I've been working on my top prospects yarns, which I will actually have finished by the end of this week, finally, because I did accidentally delete my work a couple of weeks ago, and then I had to start again, and then the derby came around, and I didn't want to write about that stuff right before a derby. Now the derby's done, so I will. So I have been thinking closely about this, and I do, yeah, it's undeniable, and it's undeniable at a point where the A-League team is much better than the other one. Not only is Auckland FC better than the Wellington Phoenix, but they seem to spook them to such a significant degree that they've ruined the trajectory of the Phoenix under the previous coach. They just, oh man, it never was that more obvious than on the weekend, where they concede one of the freakiest own goals in history and then stop playing football for the rest of the half. There's just the way in which they just broke mentally at the first sign of faltering is so bad.
Don't bring that up again.
It's traumatic stuff. We're
talking about the system here.
But the reserve team has dominated maybe not quite as much of a dominance thing. They did beat Wellington Phoenix in the National League when they played. It was only a 2-1 result, but they did beat them there. And they finished ahead of them, and they did better in their first season than the Phoenix reserves have ever done in a National League. I get that the flip side of that, the devil's advocate to that would be but they didn't develop those players. They picked them from other clubs. But I don't want to alarm people about how the Wellington Phoenix operate, but they were also picking players from other clubs, and they're not signing them all at 13 years old. But that's same thing is true. And if it's not true, they have the ability to do the same thing. So, I mean, there's no denying that over the past 12 months, the players that have been picked by Auckland FC, nurtured by Auckland FC, developed by Auckland FC, etc., have been more successful than the Phoenix ones. And you can't I can't see an argument even to the other aspect of that.
And Auckland FC actually have some crossover between their A-League team and their reserves team. As we've discussed, there's not a whole lot of crossover between the Wellington Phoenix teams. Let's have a bit of mindfulness.
Oh, yeah. We do that too. Where are we?
We got a bit hostile there about see you later, Chiefy. Maybe Green Acres just as bad. Shout out to Auckland FC because they are the big dog. They are the Chiefies of the Derby. I think that one might stick. So, in Chiefy's honor, Auckland, this is the chief. These teams are playing to be the chief. And Auckland FC gave Chief the shoulder, Sonny Bull shoulder, and they are the Chiefs. Chiefys.
Yeah, I was tempted to say something like Chief Slayers or something, but that's going too violent, and also that might have like historical connotations that we don't want to, touch upon. But it does lead into this quote from Tom Robbins, novelist from, I think this is from Every Cowgirl Gets the Blues. I think that's what this quote is. That's the book that this quote is from, which goes, "There are many things worth living for, a few things worth dying for, nothing worth killing for."
It, I don't think like it's obviously been around the traps for a while, but I did hear in a song recently, "An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind."
Yes, I've heard that also.
Yeah, and it's like that's what I thought of when you said that one, because like it's just yeah, at some point we're just killing each other, not we, others, and
Also, not at some point.
at this
I think there's
moment,
a lot of people that at this moment in time that's happening a lot more than should be.
and there are a lot of situations where everyone just seems content with killing other people.
Or even just content with other people killing other people and not doing anything about it,
Well, let's be honest. Some of the situations, there's not a lot we can do, other than spread peace, love, and positivity, and try and focus on the love and light, and bring it back to yourself. Like you don't need to exact revenge. Like it's not mandatory that you get revenge. It's not mandatory that you get what is owed to you. Like you can move on, and everything will be okay. And maybe karma will come back to that person, but yeah, I don't know what good comes from killing others and just being a dick. Is Ben Older left back now?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he hasn't played anywhere other than left back for about 2 months at St Etienne. And at first that was like a emergency situation under a coach who was struggling to keep his job. Could be describing Matt Sheridan at the Wellington Phoenix, I guess. But Ben Old was asked to play left back when their main left back went out injured. There were whispers earlier on in the season, so it didn't come out of nowhere. There was a hint that maybe he had been there just a little bit in order to be like for that case of emergency. But he was tried there for the last few games of Eric Hornkamp's tenure at St Etienne, and they kept losing, but he kept playing there. And then the other dude gets back from injury, and Old keeps playing there. Hornkamp gets sacked because they were waiting to sack him for a long time. And eventually they finally had someone to replace him with. So they pulled trigger on that. And then the new guy comes in and he keeps Ben Old at left back, even with a specialist left back sitting on the bench who I don't know has even played more than a couple of minutes since he returned, and he was their main guy before. So clearly two different coaches have enjoyed this approach from Ben Old, have thought he's doing enough in that position to stick with it. And from what I've managed to see from highlights and stuff, I am now moving on from the idea of like, this is a good way to get him into the team, adapt to what the guys around you require, get him where you fit in. I've moved past that and started thinking, well, maybe he just needs to play some left back for the All Whites as well. Like perhaps we've just discovered something, and he's good in this position, and he should stay there. Maybe not permanently. I mean, he can always play. That's the thing, is that he now he's gone from being a guy who would play for the All Whites on the left wing, and that's your role. That's the one spot you're going to get into. Now he has two spots that he can get into, and if you need like, I mean, Libby Kakache is injured at the moment. Is he going to play in the next international window? He might return before then, and he will. That's fine. They might also just decide we don't need to add that kind of travel to your season when you've already had 4 muscle injuries. Perhaps you actually need those 2 weeks off to just rest. So you've got nothing to prove for the All Whites either. You're one of our best players, let alone a starting 11. You don't need to play this tour. That's fine. We're going to give Francis de Vries a chance to run around there and see what he can do a little bit more. He's had a few games with Kakache being injured at the end of last year. And Ben Old might just be the next up option. I don't know, but I've seen enough from him at St. Etienne, and I'm seeing the signs from two different coaches, one of whom was losing a lot, and one of whom is coming and have now won 3 games in a row and are back up to second in the French second tier and looking like they will get promoted after all, which was in doubt for a little while there, despite them being kind of like the big dogs in that division having been relegated. Everyone sort of expected the rich team to go straight back up. They've had to change coaches for that, but the train seems to be back on the tracks now, and it's back on the tracks with Ben Old as a left back. So yeah, I'm just adding that to his quiver now. It's no longer he's a winger playing left back. I think he's now just a winger / left back. He can do both.
And just quickly, Elijah just scored another goal.
Oh, of course he did. With Sir Alex Ferguson in the crowd watching as well. Probably turned up just to watch him. He has now 7 of his last 8 games. He's got a goal contribution in the league because they did get knocked out of the cup midweek, which wasn't nice, but they had 2 ridiculous red cards. So what are you going to do when you get 2 ridiculous red cards against you? You're probably going to lose. But he's been so influential for a Motherwell team where like everyone was talking about they're sitting in 4th place, but everyone out there, because Rangers aren't having that good of a season, Celtic having an even worse season. Hearts actually the team that's leading it, and with Cammy Devlin, a former Wellington Phoenix player, in the middle of that squad, doing very good things for them. That like, you know, Hearts themselves have dropped a few points recently, so it's become pretty clear that Motherwell are the form team in the Scottish Premiership. They're the team that everyone is excited to watch. They're the team that I'm excited to watch. When I see that they're on, I grab a stream somewhere. Not just to watch Elijah Just, also to watch Elijah Just because he's always doing something and he's such an influential part of why that team is good. But they play such beautiful football. Really, they play the type of football that Giancarlo Italiano envisaged for the Wellington Phoenix this season, but was never able to coax out of them. Well, Motherwell actually do that stuff. They do play with a high line. They are aggressive in winning the ball in midfield and then sparking transitional counterattacks. And they have attacking midfielders who can pick passes and unlock defenses, and wing backs who get forward and whip the ball in the area, and a striker who's scoring lots of goals. All these things that the Phoenix wanted to do, Motherwell actually do, and they do extremely well. That's a brilliant team to watch, and Elijah Just is at least one of their 3 best players. And there's a lot of good players in a team that's playing that well. He is without doubt one of their most influential players, and he starts every single game. Even when they rotate, he's still starting. Doesn't play 90 minutes a lot because that's the trade-off. If you're going to start every game, you're going to have to be subbed off to get some rest somewhere. But he's brilliant. He suits that team so perfectly. He's working with a coach he's worked with in the past, although interestingly, he has said that the way they played when he was with him in Denmark at Horsens is not the way they play now. Like that style has evolved a fair bit. But I mean, it's evolved closer to what Elijah Just likes to play. So it's just a perfect fit, and he's in such good form right now.
We have just had news this morning that Mitchell Barnett is departing the Warriors at the end of the season for family reasons. So obviously he needs to get back to Australia, so that's all right. And I haven't checked around, but I imagine this is going to be a huge blow for the Warriors and all this stuff. Just kind of freestyling my thoughts right here. This, it just overlaps nicely with the abundance of forwards coming through the Warriors system on the rise, who, based on what we've seen in preseason, have made improvements. So, I don't think Andrew Webster's going to be there is a thing with the Warriors where they do manage development. They it's not just oh, you played 5 good NRL games last season, so now you're in the top 17, top 19 for this season straight away. There's not that automatic continuation. I think the Warriors are very deliberate in how the younger players might get a taste and then be managed through their development. And I think we're going to see that with Leka Halasima. I don't think the Warriors are just putting Leka Halasima out there assuming that he is going to be doing everything he did last season. I think there will be some management of that, and I feel a lot more confident about that player development than the Phoenix. This is like Auckland FC are closer to what the Warriors are doing, and the Warriors are closer to what Auckland FC do.
We know it's also funny is that the Wellington Phoenix women, I was thinking before, are actually closer to what Auckland FC do than they are to what the Wellington Phoenix men do.
Roger that. And of course, Barnett's out injured right now. So it is going to make the opening stages of the season very interesting, because I think you're going to see some of these forwards just settle into the rotation. And of course, if you put the little family reasons tag on it, then everyone chills out and they're like, oh, what are the Warriors doing? You shouldn't release them. Well, as soon as you put the family tag and some information around the situation, then everyone can kind of chill out a bit. And we have seen the Warriors do this consistently. The Warriors have consistently, during the two Andes era, released players, not just for compassionate reasons, but also for contract reasons. Like, players have left the Warriors for a better opportunity, a better contract somewhere else. And I don't think the Warriors might just do that because they're nice guys like Chiefy, but I also think they trust their system. I think the Warriors are very confident in the players they have on the rise through their system, their development of those players, their coaching, because as we've talked about, New South Wales Cup Warriors play the same way as the NRL Warriors. The Jersey Flegg and down through the lines, they're learning the same skills and systems to prepare them for NRL footy. And maybe that's something about the Phoenix. I don't know if the Phoenix system is preparing players to contribute consistently in the A-League, let alone go overseas.
Do you know who the head of professional development is? That's the official title at the Wellington Phoenix. You know who that is? Who holds that one?
Tana Umaga.
Chris Greenacre.
Oh, right. You've just completely...
Tana Umaga would be good, though.
You've completely changed my whole Chris Greenacre vibe, so congratulations.
I think he's only held that role for like 1 year, but still, that's
but now I hate
1 year where the prop happened.
Like, you've just outlined why I should not be excited about Chris Greenacre taking over as interim coach and maybe full-time coach, and that's all right. What was I saying about the Warriors? Their system produces, it develops players to play in the NRL. And I think we're just going to see that continue. And I think that's a good spot for the Warriors to be in. Mitchell Barnett's really good at rugby league. Because it's not just my opinion. Like, we've seen it before. The Warriors lose Adam Whanua-Blake. The Warriors lose Tohu Harris. The Warriors lose Dylan Walker. The Warriors lose this player. They lose that player. And they just keep trucking along. You know, like, none of those departures have made a massive impact on the Warriors. And based on what I've seen, like, you can say you can argue about, like, who's better, Tohu Harris, Mitchell Barnett, and Whanua-Blake, or maybe even Dylan Walker with the skill set. It has not had a massive impact on the Warriors, because the Warriors are an organization, they're a system, and yes, they weren't as good without Barnett and Metcalf last season, but it wasn't as bad as people expected it to be. They stayed in the finals. So I'm not too sad about it, like, especially because there is this kind of bottleneck of young forwards at the club, and you've got some senior forwards who I was getting a little bit iffy on. Like, my last video, I was kind of talking about how some of these more senior forwards could very soon be overtaken, and that would be pretty dramatic. And in our newsletter, thenichecache.substack.com, for Monday, I did drop my expected Warriors team for round 1, and I had to check on the injury reports, and apparently Harris Tavita and Marata Niokore are all good for round 1. So that's going to impact selections. They haven't played in preseason footy, but apparently that was to manage them to be ready for round 1. And this isn't my favorite Warriors team. This is my expected Warriors team. We got Shanstile Clockstar at fullback, Tuivasa-Sheck, Watane Zelezniak on the wings, Adam Pompey and Ali Leotawa at centre, Tanner Boyd, Harris Tavita, Wade Egan, Fisher Harris, Aaron Clark, and Dimitri Vaimonga, assuming he's available. Edges are Kurt Capewell, Marata Niukore, and then we got a bench, and apparently we're rocking with the big benches this year. Taintu Aupiki, Sam Healy, Jackson Ford, Jacob Laban, Tanner Stowers-Smith, Morgan Gannon. And then my next up players, Alofiana Khan Pereira covering the outside backs, Luke Hansen covering the halves. With the current situation, Makaya Tafua adding a bit of small forward dummy half depth, and Iriaramia Toiava is the next up forward. I have selected Morgan Gannon ahead of Iriaramia Toiava. I think Gannon's doing a good job. So when we're thinking about bigger picture stuff here with Barnett leaving the Warriors, to me, the best way to absorb that is by, and the best thing about like managing this forward pack, I'm not sure about contract status, but the Warriors can just move Marata Niukore to middle forward. Allow him to be a ruthless middle forward, and then you can get Jacob Laban to start on one edge. Wait, hold on. I'm an absolute fraud. Because Leka Halasima is not even in this team that I wrote down. Obviously, I just had a blind spot there. So Leka Halasima has got to be in your top 19. And in this team, I might take out Morgan Gannon or Tanner Stowers-Smith and put Leka Halasima on that bench. But you can, like the Warriors, when these type of things happen, everyone's looking to sign a player. And yes, you can sign a player. Yes, I am curious about who the Warriors sign moving forward, but we got lots of time. But there's just other moves you can make. Like you can put Niukore into the middle, Jacob Laban or Leka Halasima's on an edge forward spot with Kurt Capewell. Bang, right there. You've added another middle forward, and you've used your abundance of edge forwards because Gannon can play edge, Iriaramia Toiava can play edge, Halasima and Laban are edge forwards. So you can use your abundance of edge forwards and move a older edge forward into the middle. You can do stuff like that to cover it. And I think we're going to see how this could look to start the season because Barnett's going to be missing the start of the season. And I think that is helpful and useful for us as fans to see, like, who are the players who will benefit from this. And if, like, let's go best case scenario, the Warriors are good. Warriors are top 4 to start the season. Without Luke Metcalf or Mitchell Barnett, I think that will put obviously that is a great place to be in. That is a best case scenario. But if you see good Warriors footy without Mitchell Barnett in the forward pack, I think that's just going to calm everyone down regarding his absence and his departure. And I'd also because there's this thing about the Bulldogs, right? The Bulldogs always have got like heaps of basically edge forwards in their forward pack. So their middle forwards were edge forwards. And then they sign a Leo Thompson because you do need a ruthless middle forward. Barnett was an edge forward who has grown into a middle forward role with the Warriors. Fisher Harris started as an edge forward at the Panthers, became a middle forward. Dimitri Vaimunga's played edge forward in the Warriors system. Kurt Capewell's just an edge forward. Marata Niukore, edge forward who could be a middle forward. He's already played middle forward. Jackson Ford was an edge forward. Now he's a middle forward. Morgan Gannon, edge and middle. Like the Warriors forward pack is basically forwards. It's not like there's a whole bunch of there's 4 pure middle forwards because Vaimonga's the closest to a pure middle forward, but he's also played edge. Tanistell Smith is the pure middle forward, whereas all the other forwards have played edge forward and can play middle as well. So the Warriors have built their system, and I just thought maybe they haven't had the piss taken out of them as many people took the piss out of the Bulldogs for signing utilities, but their forward packs look pretty similar as far as the balance of like versatility and utility value. Barnett's been that player for the Warriors because he can play middle and edge forward at a very high level. And the Warriors are well stocked in those positions. So I think players who will benefit from it right now, or not right now because Barnett's injured, but coming into this season, like Tanistell Smith is going to benefit from this greatly. Because he's been good preseason, and now he gets an opportunity to... Like, there's going to be a hole opening up in that forward pack for someone to step into a bigger role. And I think Morgan Gannon is another player to watch out for. Neither of whom are as good as Barnett, because Barnett is maybe the second best forward. He might be the best. I don't know. I reckon Aaron Clark is just as useful as Mitchell Barnett right now. So anytime you lose that type of player, it's going to be a bit of an issue. But the combination of Barnett being injured to start this season and the production line of young forwards at the Warriors, as well as their proven record of nifty recruitment. Like, they haven't made any big name signings, but the players they have signed, especially for this season, they are needs and they're deep cuts. The Warriors needed speed, so they signed Khan Pereira. No one really knows much about Morgan Gannon. But Andrew, the two Andys know all about Morgan Gannon because they signed him from England. So this isn't doom and gloom. This is quite positive because the Warriors can fill that void, as well as filling that void bigger picture with any possible signings in a year's time.
Yeah, and the thing about having a reserve grade team that is developing players to be NRL players specifically for the Warriors is that you can think 2 or 3 years down the line, and we've already seen this, haven't we, quite a few times with the Warriors, where it's like Dylan Walker moves on because, well, that was more Aaron Clark, but then also because, they've got, I don't know, whoever else is ready from the, like, they can move on. Well, they got players in every position, basically. We've talked about this a bit, where like those Australian players, including Barnett, who's been really good for them when he wasn't injured, and they did all right with him after. He weren't quite as high of a ceiling team when he was injured, but they battled on pretty nicely without him for a lot of last season. Those guys aren't necessarily in it for the long haul, but they have that kind of future succession planning there ready to go with whoever. Like, they knew Mitch Barnett wasn't going to probably be there in 3 or 4 years, so they know in 3 or 4 years they need someone else ready to go, and they've got like 3 or 4 guys ready to go for when that happens next season.
The New South Wales Cup team, who had their preseason game against Redcliffe, Now I'm kind of viewing some of these things a little bit differently because, well, first of all, Rodney Tuipulotu-Vea was starting prop in this game. Very impressed with what he's done in the preseason for the Warriors. So there's the next kind of young forward to watch out for behind Eddie Iramia-Toiava. As far as middle goes, we know Kalis Fatialofa is brewing towards a NRL debut as well as an edge forward with a little bit of versatility. And this goes back to the system stuff. Junior Sikavea he's played preseason footy. He was in this New South Wales Cup trial. We've seen him get opportunities. He's a very similar player to Aaron Clark, and he was named to start at lock in this game for the New South Wales Cup Warriors. But we got 3 emerging big boppers in the Warriors system. Amosi Ravosai, Mikaeli Ilau, and Tepatasi Laumali'i. So you got 3 big boppers there. And then there are 2 players who deep cuts of Warriors recruitment. This happens every year where just randoms pop out of nowhere to play New South Wales Cup for the Warriors and or under 21s. These guys, like Samuel Waterworth, isn't a random because he's been playing Fox Memorial in Auckland for Hibiscus Coast, but I think he's a middle forward, and he was in that New South Wales Cup squad coming straight out of Fox Memorial, so that's a nifty bit of recruitment. And also Hohepa Chandler. He's got a background in basketball, I think, because there's another dude the Warriors have got, Tama Darlington. Him and Hohepa Chandler both have a few basketball accolades on their Google searches. But Hohepa Chandler was playing, I think he was a loose forward in Premier Rugby in Tauranga, coming out of Tauranga Boys College First 15. And he might be forecasting as a hard worker middle forward as well, but could be an edge forward. And to me, that just sums up where the Warriors system is at. The Mitchell Barnett news is making me sharpen and narrow my focus even further. So these are very big picture ideas, but the Mitchell Barnett news, now I'm most interested in game 1, in game 2, in game 3, and how the Warriors work through that, how their forward pack works through that, rather than bigger, like what are the Warriors going to do when Barnett actually leaves coming into next season. But part of that bigger picture perspective does include this New South Wales Cup group where the ability to produce forwards is on display. You got 2 who have been impressive in the NRL preseason. We got 3 emerging big boppers, and we got 2 players who are deep cut recruits to play at the New South Wales Cup, maybe under 21 level as well. Let alone forwards who are going to pop out of nowhere for the Jersey Flegg team, let alone the guys who are doing the job in the under 19 team at the moment. So I think that is a interesting perspective. I trust the Warriors, I trust their recruitment, I trust their development to absorb this. Of course, they can sign a player. I think they will. They sign players every summer, or sign new players for each season. So someone will be signed. But the Mitchell Barnett news only makes me want to focus on round 1 even more. That big news just makes me want to zone in on what the Warriors forward pack can do, will do right now. But it's not right now because we've got to wait another week because some NRL players are going to get put in ICE detention camps. Hopefully just the half Pākehā, half Palangi Aussie players, because if any other player gets put in a nice detention camp, that would be sad and crazy. Given
good practice for the All Whites in a few months, though. So
that would be,
and the Olympics in a year or 2. Yeah,
that would be weird though if the headline is All Whites players arrested by ICE, because then all these Americans are going
yeah, right. Yeah,
wait, why is ICE arresting white players? Why are they arresting white people? That's not what they're there for. But then the All Whites get arrested.
Well, at least the Basketball World Cup's not going there anytime soon.
Hopefully the All Blacks don't go there.
Yeah.
But they usually do because you get a bit of money from USA Rugby. Righto. So, yep, Warriors, good stuff. To be honest, after that whole Chiefy opening segment, I'm a bit rattled, but we'll keep moving and grooving. You did throw up this idea, you wanted the Breakers to win the Ignite Cup with the local depth shining through. some of their inputs did the job, but did the Breakers Ignite Cup success, the Ignite Cup championship, did that leave you with like a positive feeling about the local depth at the Breakers?
Not like I got on, was it Thursday or Friday night when they absolutely walloped Cairns in an otherwise, dead rubber game, both teams out of the playoffs. Cairns obviously barely even turned up. And also Mojave King, I don't think, played that game, and Sam Wardenberg's been injured, so they didn't even have the Kiwis, so what do you know? But the Breakers got some really nice stuff there. I think Carlin Davidson got a career high in that game. Takaha Cooper got some decent minutes and knocked down a few 3-pointers, and got to do the press conference afterward, the old podium game.
Is he? That was a pretty short ban for the Aotearoa vitamins, I think. Yeah.
Oh, it was like a month. It was barely even worth reporting when that happened. It was such a weird little, just like why.
That's what we want. Just
why do people care?
Sure, if you need to have a punishment because we're in a country of elderly people who do their thing. So you got to this. It just sums up where the New Zealand mindset is at right now. But if you're only getting banned for a month, it's all good. You can finish. You can play the last game of the season, show it flex, and you might have some Aotearoa vitamins in the off season, serve another 1 month, and it's all good.
Yeah, it's sweet as. He might be due because he doesn't have a game for a little while. He was talking about in his press conference about how he feels like, he's got a great platform now to go into the next New Zealand NBL season. So I think we can pencil down that name for someone who, Carlin Davidson over the last 2 years has been an example of that. Someone who just went to a whole other extreme, starting in the New Zealand League and then taking that on from there with Tall Blacks, with the Breakers. So hopefully Takaha Cooper has a jump similar to that, where we've seen him make pretty steady progress over the last couple of years, but hopefully there's a jump coming on top of that. But even at the end of that game, I mean, they finished with a lineup that had Cooper out there, Alex McNaught was out there, Liam Judd was out there, Jack Andrew was out there, and the other one, is that 5 or is there someone else I'm missing? Taylor Brett was also out there as well. So that was awesome. That's New Zealand NBL royalty across those. There's a bunch of players who earned this gig, most of them development players who earned this gig through that. It was cool to see them finishing their regular season like that. Then for the Ignite Cup, Isaiah Brockington comes back into contention, and the game is a much tougher game against a far better team, and they won it. It was great. They delivered in the fourth quarter. They stayed consistent. Started giving away some dumb fouls, fouling 3-pointers and stuff like that, still making some of those what you might call losing plays towards the end, but they actually made their free throws and managed to hold off Adelaide regardless. So that was cool, but that game was very much more built upon the work of Parker Jackson Cartwright had a fantastic game. Sam Menenga again, brilliant, on the way to being announced as the NBL's Next Generation Award winner, which is what they've revamped as of a couple of years ago, revamped their Rookie of the Year award into being the Next Generation Award, which is why you get a Next Generation Award with Kareem Lopez, 18 years old, on the same shortlist as Sam Menenga, 24 years old in his third season, playing professionally in the NBL after having gone through a full college stuff in the United States, where he, as far as I know, he never got arrested. Don't really understand the meaning of that award when you stretch it out to have players who are it's supposed to be the emerging player type award, and you've got players who are 6 years apart and a guy in his third year, been a starter throughout. But Sam Menenga did win it, and he was brilliant this season, and he deserved it. And also, Flynn Cameron won Most Improved Player of the Year. So there's a decent little record of New Zealand players in the NBL popping up with the Most Improved, because I think Ruben Tarangi's won it before, and I'm pretty sure Shea Ili might have won it too. Shea Ili's definitely won Defensive Player of the Year last year, and I think he it might even be Tarangi actually, also won Sixth Man of the Year once upon a time. So there's a nice little representation when I think they call them the Gazies, the Andrew Gaze Awards come around. We do get some Kiwi players getting that recognition. Um, but yeah, no, the Ignite Cup final didn't have a lot of those youngsters, other than, Carlin Davison, who's always in the rotation anyway. Max Darling got some minutes in there and was pretty good. But Ruben Tarangi had maybe the best game of his entire season, which was awesome. He knocked down some 3-pointers. He was hanging in there for pretty decent minutes, and with no Rob Baker, who's busted his knee, so he was out for the last like month or two of the season, and that required a bit more of a few more adjustments in how they're going to play. So he's playing a lot of he's playing in the forward positions quite a bit, and like bigger roles than we've seen from him since the start of the season when they were mostly just losing. So it was nice for him to get a little bit of I don't know, vindication at the end of the season, just to have a big performance leading them to winning a trophy there. It was cool, especially because Ruben Tarangi is one of only 3 players who are under contract for next season. He's one of them. Isaiah Liafa is one of them, and he's been out injured for a lot of the season and was very erratic before that. Never really played that well in the first few months. He, like Tarangi, very good defender. That stuff was always great, but just you can't only be a good defender. You still need to be able to shoot, and Liafa's shooting was pretty rotten while he was out there. Certainly much worse than what we know he's capable of. Unfortunately, he followed on from his season in Sydney rather than what he was doing before that when he was with the Breakers previously. But he's under contract for next year. Tarangi's under contract for next year, and maybe people might have said similar things about him before the Ignite Cup, where he managed to get a bit of a statement performance in. And then the other one is Parker Jackson Cartwright. So that is pretty significant because that's your lead import. And I've had critiques about how Parker Jackson Cartwright has played at times, particularly in fourth quarters this season, but he is the team's most talented player. And if he gets critique, it's because he, more than anyone else, is capable of more, because he takes that responsibility of being the ball handler in those clutch moments. There's pressure that comes with that, and this team lost a lot of games in those fourth quarter situations, so he has to wear some of that. A lot of it's also coaching, though, and the coach is coming off contract. Petteri Koponen, that's the end of his second year in charge. I wouldn't. I would hope that winning an in-season tournament against a team who was probably a little more focused in the competing for the championship that they're playing for in the finals coming up, rather than this particular game, I would hope that doesn't change any of the thinking about what the team is hoping to do for next season. But we'll see, because I think in a similar way to last season, we did see under Coach Kopp, we did see the Breakers keep trying, which is nice. That was one of the things Boucher said about last season to this season and why he was happy to keep him on. He was under contract, so they would have had to pay him out to sack him. And they must have wanted at least some continuity when they were already changing ownership. But one of the things he said about them was that he was able to get a tune out of his players in a way that maybe Giancarlo Italiano didn't, and well, at least didn't in derby games. The Breakers had that, but then it's like if you've had 2 years in a row where the team tried hard, that's cool, but you still had losing records and both of them didn't make the finals, didn't play up to your potential. I don't know that you can get a third year. You might get a second year as a head coach on the back of that, but I don't think you really get a third year off the back of that. So we'll see where they go. There's a lot of decisions to be made, but having PJC under contract for next season helps them in a big way to at least, like, any recruit they talk to now knows at least some part of what the team's going to look like. Guys will probably want to play with a point guard who does get a lot of assists like that, who does have a good reputation across the league, who has been around for a few years at this team in this league. That helps. But yes, some big decisions to be made for Dylan Boucher and the ownership, where do they retain their coach? If they don't, who do they go with? Is it just a matter of Judd Flavel stepping up? Could he do that and the Tall Blacks? Might he prioritize Tall Blacks? I don't know. Where else might they want to go from that? And then, of course, the next generation man himself, Sam Meninga, back of, I would make an argument that he was the team's MVP over PJC this season. I think Meninga was brilliant. And when he did get injured for a little bit towards the end there, that was when they started losing a couple of those key games, and you started to realize, okay, they're probably not going to make that run to make the finals. Would that have been different if he'd been healthy? Maybe not, but it certainly was a factor there. Meninga, that's got to be priority number one, I think. Can you retain him? And then from there, you work your way through the roster. The thing is, when you've only got three guys under contract and you're coming off a bad year, at least you've got flexibility, right? At least you've got plenty of room to maneuver. If you want to keep things the same and build upon what you've done, you probably can. If you want to shake things up significantly, well, you can do that too.
Let's finish with a bit of cricket where Northern Districts won the HBJ Shield final and Central Districts won the Ford Trophy. I think this was Northern District's first time winning the HBJ Shield final, and I just liked how the White Ferns selections, who are playing tomorrow night, Wednesday night, against Zimbabwe, which doesn't have any broadcast information listed next to it on the scoring page for New Zealand cricket. So good stuff there. We'll wait and see. The White Ferns selections of Nensi Patel and Kayley Knight just aligned nicely with how Northern Districts finished their season. I think Nensi Patel and Knight deserve to be in the White Ferns, and they weren't spectacular against Wellington in the final, but they just showed their class and their quality, and that they do deserve to be in the White Ferns squad. My favourite nugget for Northern District's woman is that Nensi Patel, I believe she is the smallest player in domestic cricket, men and women. The smallest player in women's cricket, at least, had the second highest batting strike rate in HBJ Shield. Only two players were over 100 strike rates. Izzy Gaze, 89 runs at 106. Nensi Patel, 290 runs at a strike rate of 103. So 3 times as many runs as Izzy Gaze. Similar strike rate. They were the only players over 100 strike rates. So the smallest player had the highest strike rate for 100 runs, at least. Funnily enough, Nensi Patel also had a super smash strike rate, which was just below 100. So her one-day strike rate was higher than her T20 strike rate, and not just like for her personally, higher and lower, but also really high in the context of HBJ Shield and quite low in the context of Super Smash. But it does at least show that Nensi Patel does have a bit of power. She can score her runs quickly, and she was excellent with bat and ball throughout the season, as was Kayley Knight, as was a lot of the Northern players. We talked about them last week in the preview. But one other player to highlight was Holly Topp. 39 runs down the order was the highest score in the final. She was batting 8. The only other player who scored 30 plus runs in the final was Wellington's number 8, Isla McKenzie, who scored 32 runs. So the number 8s for both teams were the only batters who scored 30 plus runs. And Holly Topp's a really good wicketkeeper. You got Izzy Gaze and Polly Ingalls in the White Ferns group right now. And of course, when we're talking White Ferns, got to remind folks, Jess McFadgen's probably the best wicketkeeper in New Zealand. She won't be playing for the White Ferns anytime soon. Jess Watkin is basically a better version of Nensi Patel, but she won't be playing for the White Ferns anytime soon. Kate Anderson's arguably the best batter in HBJ Shield, leading run scorer, I think. She won't be playing for the White Ferns anytime soon. So that's just the landscape. But Holly Topp is, to me, she's the best in the tier below. Kate Gaging has had more kind of looks in different games and stuff like that. Development spots, Central District's wicketkeeper, Kate Gaging. But Holly Topp, I don't see any difference between her and Kate Gaging. I think they're both really good emerging wicketkeeper batters. And Holly Topp, her 39 runs were crucial in helping Northern Districts set a competitive target, and then giving their bowling attack, which is Kayley Knight, Marama Downs. Marama Downs is awesome. Nensi Patel, Jess Watkin, all those bowlers, giving them something to bowl at against a good Wellington team. So that flows into this White Ferns. They got a T20 on Wednesday. So the T20 series to start. The White Ferns should win the series. They are the better team with the better players. And as we've talked about, very funky. I don't know if the White Ferns squad was announced when we recorded last Tuesday, but it's a very fresh and vibrant squad under the captaincy of Mealy Kerr now. And I like that squad. Like, yes, you can say, oh, why is Kane Anderson not there? Well, Emma McLeod's really good at batting as well as a younger player. Like, we had the recent retirement of Lauren Down, who is a good batter, has been a really good batter until like 3 years ago. And she hasn't really done much for Auckland. She did play a few White Ferns games over this period. Izzy Sharp's way better than her. And this is kind of a new phase for White Ferns where I think we need to release some of the ideas we had previously, because another example, Fran Jonas. I don't see Fran Jonas being selected ahead of Flora Devonshire anytime soon. But there's kind of these players and little pockets of the previous White Ferns era that I think are going to be brushed aside moving forward. And we're going to see some of that young talent come through in the series against Zimbabwe, led by Mealy Kerr. So that will be fun. Ford Trophy.
Advertised on TVNZ, by the way. So it is on TV, that series. And if you thought the Chiefy nickname got overused, we'll probably be hearing a fair few of those being the TVNZ way. Get a few new players in as well, so maybe we get a few new nicknames with it too.
Oh,
I was listening to old mate. You know what I'm talking about. I was listening to old mate. He popped up on one of the like breakfast shows on TV1, just doing like the sports roundup. So he was talking about the Phoenix, and he was talking about Jakey, or just Jake. You know, Jake Gerwood, right? But he was just Jake. Didn't forget about the rest of the name. And Jake nearly scoring from halfway, and then Joshy there in goal trying. Like, bro, it's bad enough on the cricket, but you're on the news here, bro.
I also chuckled now that you remind me, the formation they had before the game, Gerwood right was like
in midfield,
defensive midfield. I was like, first off, I was like, oh, that's new, that's weird, that's what's happening there. And then I was like, oh, that's not how they're going to play.
Wait, I remember they lie on those team sheets all the time. Yeah, that's true.
Ford Trophy final. Shout out to Henry Nichols. Shout out to Tom Latham. Good seasons, both averaged over 70, scored over 500 runs. Nichols 4 centuries, Latham 2 centuries, so they scored 6 centuries in the Ford Trophy combined. Latham also had 3 other 50s. Will Young scored a century, 157 runs, strike rate of 119. Just Will Young doing his thing. All of which completely puts Curtis Heaphy in the shade. And we're not here to put Curtis Heaphy in the shade, because Curtis Heaphy, I think there is a case to be made he is the best emerging batter in New Zealand right now. It's a complicated case. So I'm not saying he is the best young batter, but there's a case to be made. He scored a century in the grand final, 105 runs. Thing about Curtis Heaphy, we've always said it, is he scores much slower than other batters. So when, like, the only batter that I'm putting Curtis Heaphy in the same bracket as Reece Mario and Bevan Jacobs. To me, they're the best batters. Obviously, Bevan Jacobs smashes it. And Reece Mario has shown he can score quickly, although he hasn't necessarily expressed himself in the Super Smash, but there's other things I can point to, like his ODI strike rate, his strike rate when he scores double centuries, plural. He scores those runs really fast. Curtis Heaphy doesn't score as fast as those dudes, so when you check Curtis Heaphy's strike rates, you're going to be like, what's going on here? But Curtis Heaphy's averaging 46.7 in first class batting, 53.1 in list day batting, and he's got a pretty high T20 average. Like, he's Kane Williamson or Bubba Azam in T20 cricket, averaging 25.8 with a strike rate of 109. Strike rates are low, averages are high. And like Reece Mariua and Bevan Jacobs both average over 50 in first class cricket. Their list day averages are around 30. So when we're comparing them, you got the strike rates. Jacobs and Mariu average over 50 in first class. Curtis Heaphy averages 46.7. So he's there or thereabouts. One day cricket, Mariu and Jacobs average closer to 30, and Curtis Heaphy's averaging 53. Curtis Heaphy is 22 years old, and he's already won each competition with Central Districts. He didn't play... So he won the... he didn't play every game of the Plunkett Shield, but he was part of the Plunkett Shield season 2022-2023, which Central Districts won. And he averaged 27.6, 249 runs. Then he won the Super Smash last season for Central Districts as a useful batter in every position. This year he's won the Ford Trophy, averaging 60.5. So New Zealand, because when you ask anyone, you ask me, I'm going to say Mariu, I'm going to say Bevan Jacobs, all these other batters. But I am now telling myself Curtis Heaphy at least needs to be in the same bracket as Mariu and Jacobs. Like those, it's 3. It's not 2. I think some people may have thought it was just Mariu. But then if you dig deeper, you'll see that Bevan Jacobs is also awesome at batting in all 3 formats, and he deserves to be in that category. Now we got to add Curtis Heaphy into that group, because Curtis Heaphy, his production of runs in a good Central Districts team is just as notable as Mariu and Jacobs, and he has contributed in 3 different championships for Central Districts. Like, I don't know if Reece Mariu's won anything for Canterbury. I don't know if Bevan Jacobs won anything for Auckland off the top of my head. Like, just one competition. Curtis Heaphy has won a competition in each format already. T20 is his weakest format, but he played some really important innings in the Super Smash Championship last summer. He was not out in the final. He batted in multiple positions for CD. So he's good enough to help CD win a Super Smash Championship, while also averaging 46.7 in first class batting and 53 in one day batting. All of that to me smells like a recipe for him being in the mix for one of the best emerging batters in Aotearoa. And given he averages over 45 in those 2 formats, well, the other 2 don't, with an average over 50 in one of those formats, that smells a lot like New Zealand's best emerging batter right now.
Well, particularly in a winning team as well, where it's, I get that it's probably a little bit easier to pile on the runs when you're in a winning team because you've got good players around you. You're able to bat in partnerships and stuff, but it's a lot harder to get into a winning team. the fact that he sustained that in multiple formats and all the formats really, and even in his like the Super Smash is clearly or T20 is clearly like the weakest of the three for him, but he's able to adapt his game and find different ways to contribute there. And like I mean they're in the running to win the Plunkett Shield again this season. Who knows? Like there's this. I looked at the standings before and it's very close because I don't think anyone has won more than half of their games. It's just a bunch of teams with like 2 wins, a loss, and a no result after a bit of wet weather earlier on in the season. The only difference is really in because if you just look at their first class records and what they've done, it is absolutely it's a 1-2-3. And there is a trick there that people might fall into of being like Heaphy's the slow one, Muddy's somewhere in between, and Jacobs is the one who smashes the ball all the time, scores at a high strike rate. But Jacobs has scored centuries at reasonable first class type acceleration there, and Muddy has scored double hundreds at close to a runner ball. Like that is a trick that's probably best avoided. The fact is they're just the 3 best emerging, not even emerging, like they're established now, but they're 3 best young established domestic batters that we have right now. It is 1-2-3. They are on a par. The difference is that Muddy has played for New Zealand and Bevan Jacobs has played for New Zealand and Curtis Heaphy has not. All 3 of them, though, decent amount of NZA stuff already in their careers as well, though. So Heaphy, just by that alone, that he is on the radar and not very far away, because generally when it comes to calling up new players, they're looking towards guys who have had that little bit of a step up through the New Zealand A selection. That's what they use those teams for, is to give some experience to the guys that they're looking at for international cricket. But yeah, absolutely. Like that is a top 3 there, and that's a very good top 3.
Shout out to Josh Clarkson. Excellent season for him with bat and ball, but he was the leading wicket taker in the whole competition. Also hit a century, also hit a 50. Josh Clarkson averaged 42 with the bat and 19 with the ball. Just going back, Curtis Heaphy, he's earning selection in that CD team despite his strike rates. So it's not just like, oh, he's getting into a good team. That's like pretty hard to do. He's doing it while he's scoring much slower than everyone else. And I guess CD can absorb that because Will Young, Josh Clarkson, Dane Cleaver, Tom Bruce, Dean Foxcroft, like all those dudes score runs really quickly. Like Will Young's always in the mix for the Black Caps. I think Dean Foxcroft will be playing a lot more Black Caps cricket over the next year or so. He had a good season. Jaden Lennox basically has averaged in the 20s in everything he's done this season, including ODIs in India. And Brett Randall is one of the best seamers in Aotearoa. He averages below 28 in all 3 formats, 25 in first class, 22 in list A, 27.7 in T20 bowling. If you want to be specific, Jaden Lennox averaged 28 in the ODI series against India, 24 in the Super Smash, and 29.9 in the Ford Trophy. So expect Jaden Lennox to stay in the Black Caps mixer. And this is the Black Caps system. This is New Zealand cricket, where we're talking about 3 young batters who all average over 45 in first class cricket. We're talking about Jaden Lennox as a spinner, and we also have Tim Pringle. We also have Addy Ashok. We're talking about Dean Foxcroft adding to his Black Caps appearances. But are we sure that's going to happen? Because there's a lot of dudes ahead of him. It's a lot of talent coming through the New Zealand cricket pipelines, and I think Curtis Heaphy is a really good example of that because he's a bit more undercover. But he's contributing to winning for a really, really good team.
Yeah, I mean, he scored 100 in the final as well, which is that's not a that's again we were just like it's not a overshadowed by Will Young perhaps scoring hundreds not just in the final but the elimination final as well,
Yes.
which is crazy stuff. But yeah, there's no conversation of them winning despite him or absorbing him. Absorbing a young player and their various adapting to the level, blah 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 inconsistencies. Like he scored a match-winning century in a massive partnership alongside a guy who is a perennial fringe black cat. Like that's if he'd done nothing else in his career to this point, that puts him in the mix, you know.
One last thing, he's had 3 list day seasons. 2023-24, 277 runs, averaging 39.5 with 350s. 2024-2025, 502 runs, averaging 71.7, 1 century, 350s. This season, 363 runs, averaging 60.5, 2 centuries, 150. Comprehensive, undeniable Curtis Heaphy. And that is our podcast for today. Stay tuned. Plenty more Aotearoa sports coverage coming at you. Do your best. We appreciate your presence here with us. I need to go relax. Bit fired up about Chiefy. Even more fired up about Greenacre right now. Whew. Wait and see what happens there. Big up to you. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Church.